Hey, what's up, guys? This is Dr. N here. Headed to Tampa Airport. I'm flying out to North Carolina, going to Charlotte to teach our functional endocrinology course. This is the fourth time in the last 6 weeks that I've been on the road teaching this. There's such a high demand among healthcare practitioners to learn how to manage hormones properly, and it's quite interesting that every class that I've taught in the last 6 weeks. We've had classes ranging in size from just about 25 practitioners to close to 100. And what we've seen this year, which we really haven't seen all that much in the past years, is we have an increasing number of conventional physicians, medical doctors, osteopaths, nurse practitioners that are coming to these classes because what they're realizing in their own day-to-day operations is that they were never really taught how to manage hormones. Now, sure, they were taught how to prescribe hormone medications or hormone replacement and the several different models that conventional docs can use. But here's the truth, is that when you prescribe a hormone for someone who has hormonally based symptoms, you're assuming that somebody has an absolute deficiency or inability to make an appropriate amount of hormones. And so hormone replacement strategies make sense, but only in certain circumstances. So a few weeks ago, if you were following along the videos that I've posted as I've been traveling around the country, I did one post probably about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, where I talked about the 4 pillars of hormone balance. And what I want to do is go into the first pillar just a little bit more detail and give you guys some tips that you can start to employ on your own. If you've got hormonal complaints, don't just jump into a replacement strategy. Think about the pillars, think about how you're doing on those, and see if you can do something better. So pillar number one is prostaglandin balance. Now, you may not have heard the word prostaglandins before, but I'm sure that you've heard the term essential fatty acids. And there are different classes of essential fatty acids that are from a science perspective based on how many different carbon chains they have. So for example, you have omega-6 fatty acids, and there are good and bad versions of those, and you have omega-3 fatty acids. And the omega-3 class are things like flaxseed oil or fish oil, and more specifically with the fish oil, there are two components of fish oil called EPA or DHA. So if you're taking a fish oil supplement, if you look on the label, you'll see on the label, the nutrient label itself, you'll see a listing for EPA and DHA, and the key is to make sure that you take those two numbers and add them together, and I'll give you some targets to shoot for here in just a minute. But here's the critical thing, is that the medical research in the last 10 years about hormones and hormone balance, specifically as it relates to prostaglandin balance, shows us that these prostaglandins that we get from things like fish oil are not just anti-inflammatory. And that's probably one of the greatest reasons people take fish oil, is to help control inflammation or to help improve things like cardiovascular risk. And these are all very valid reasons to use fish oil. But the prostaglandins that come out of fish oil use are called prostaglandin 3 or the prostaglandin 3 series. And yes, they are anti-inflammatory, but what the research is also showing is that these prostaglandins themselves are not just hormone precursors, but they can act as hormones themselves. And more specifically, these prostaglandins that are derived from fish oil have interactions with hormone receptors up in your brain and your hypothalamus and your pituitary, which is actually where we start hormone control from. And they have impacts on hormone receptor sites out in your peripheral tissues. And so if we look at hormonal systems being from brain to cell, right? So we have the hypothalamus talks to the pituitary then talks to your reproductive organs. Your reproductive organs make hormones, and those hormones interact with your cells. That's how the system works. These prostaglandins from fish oil really have impacts from top to bottom, right? They impact the brain's output and the signaling that says make certain types of hormones, but they also interact with how the cells are responding to the hormones on top of being hormones and precursor hormones themselves. This is an amazing discovery in the medical research, and something that you can start harnessing or leveraging in your own self-care strategies to create hormone balance. Now, having said that, how do you know if you have a prostaglandin problem? Well, if you're in your reproductive years and you have your menstrual cycle, obviously I'm talking to the ladies here, If as your cycle approaches in the last, say, week to 10 days before your cycle, if you have classic PMS symptomatology that includes things like breast pain and tenderness, swelling, if you have pelvic pain and cramping, these are classic signs that you have an inflammatory response associated with that last phase of whatever current cycle you're in, and it strongly implies a prostaglandin imbalance. And so one of the things that you can do to try to change that is to add in essential fatty acids, particularly the fish oils or the omega-3 fatty acids, to your diet and your supplementation strategy, and to make sure that you're taking high quality as well as sufficient amounts. Now, the whole quality issue is probably a topic for a different video, but when it comes to the amount that you need, very baseline recommendations would be if you were eating deep cold water fish, preferably smaller fish that don't contain a lot of toxins and things like mercury, etc., but deep cold water fish that has a high essential fatty acid or omega-3 content. And there's plenty of lists out on the internet. You can search this very easily on your own. But if you're eating those maybe 3 times a week, you're probably in the ballpark. At a very minimum, what you need to do is look at your fish oil supplement, add up the EPA, DHA levels on your ingredient label, and you want to make sure that that number totals about 2.5 to 3 grams or 2,500 to 3,000 milligrams per day. And what that means is probably the first thing that means for most people who are taking fish oils is that you're just probably not taking enough. Aside from the quality issue and potential toxins and contamination, a lot of people that are taking fish oil are taking way too little to have any kind of a therapeutic benefit. So you need to make sure you've got a good quality that's free, certified free of toxins and mercury and contaminants, but you need to be taking a minimum of 2.5 to 3 grams. Now, one of the things that we'll quite often do in the beginning of a supplementation protocol, what we do in our practice is we put together programs for people that are focused on restoring health and wellness naturally through diet, lifestyle, and supplementation, as well as coaching and education. But it is not unusual for us to leverage the power of these prostaglandins, particularly in our hormone-related cases. But a lot of times we might be going up to 7, 8, sometimes even 10 grams of fish oil per day until we get control of that inflammatory and that hormonal environment. I know I'm going a little bit long on this video, but quite honestly, I get so excited about the research as well as the things that we see changing in our clients in our practice that I kind of get on a roll. So let me just kind of recap. Hormone balance, we have 4 pillars we talked about in a previous video. The first pillar is prostaglandin balance, and the prostaglandin 3 series is one of your key anti-inflammatory. These prostaglandins not only are anti-inflammatory compounds, but they also act on the brain as well as hormone receptors in the peripheral body to help to promote hormone balance. If you are a woman with PMS type symptoms, or if you're peri or postmenopausal and you feel like your hormones are out of control and you have inflammatory type symptoms, then you need to recheck your prostaglandin balance and your omega-3 fatty acid intake. The best source is going to be fish oil. Different reasons for that we might address in a different video. But check your fish oil intake and check to see whether or not you're eating 2 to 3 servings of a deep cold water fish, again the smaller varieties, on a weekly basis. I'm running about 9 minutes here, which is way longer than I like to go. But if you've hung out this long, thanks. I really, truly appreciate it. Like us on Facebook, share this video. And if you want help from our office, maybe you've been trying things on your own and it hasn't worked out, you might need some guidance and coaching, go ahead and contact us on the page here, or go to our website at drnoseworthy.com. That's drnoseworthy.com, and send us a message. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.